Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good morning. So a husband and wife are about ready to go on a trip. And as you all know, when you're ready to leave the house for an extended period of time, you want to make sure that everything in the house is going to be safe. And so you go through a checklist in your mind of all the things that you were supposed to do before you left. Did you turn off the coffee pot? Did you close the garage door? And you know that it's somewhere along the journey, you get far enough from home that you wonder, did I in fact turn that off? And you think to yourself, well, if I haven't turned it off, what could possibly happen? And am I far enough that I should leave where I am and go back? Or should I continue on the journey? And this is how the conversation goes. Honey, did you turn off the coffee pot? And there are two possible answers to that question. The first is, yeah, I turned it off. And then you all both breathe a sigh of relief while you have in the back of your mind, I don't know if I turned off the coffee pot. That's one possible answer. The second possible answer is, did you ask me to turn off the coffee pot? And that, you should know, never ends well. No matter what the answer is to that question, no matter how you word the answer to that question, once you say, did you ask me to turn off the coffee pot? You know it's not going to go well. And the crux of that is that when you're asked that question and you feel like you're being tested, you immediately become defensive. And that's the problem that often exists in relationships. Whether we're being tested or not, it's how we feel about the experience that changes the dynamic going forward. And I have to tell you honestly, I believe this in my core, that in true loving relationships, testing is unhealthy. And I tell you the reason for that is because once you start to test somebody, you immediately ask yourself the question, do I trust them? And if it's a question you're asking yourself, there's a real challenge in that relationship. And so this morning's Parsha offers us a real challenge. Because I find that time and time again in the Torah, we have moments where God is testing. Now, the difference between the testing that God does and the testing that a teacher does is that when God tests, presumably, God knows what our answers are going to be. Presumably, God knows everything. And so God knows what we know. When a teacher gives a test to his or her students, that teacher is trying to discover what the student has learned. Sometimes it's an opportunity for students to re-engage with the material, and so it's an opportunity to reinforce. But ultimately, teachers testing students is as much for the student as it is for the teacher. I see my teachers in the room nodding their heads. Because the truth is that a teacher can learn a lot about their own teaching from giving a test. I always loved when teachers gave a test and then marked on a curve. Because that was an indication that the teacher understood the student will only do as well as that person teaches. Marking on a curve says everybody is going to get a certain amount of material. If I have given it over well enough, they'll all do well. And so a teacher marks on a curve with an understanding that there's going to be inadequacy in instruction. And so the teacher tests in order to reinforce the material and to see how well he or she is doing in imparting that material. But that's not how relationships should work. So let me read you one sentence from this week's Parsha. It says, "V'zacharti et kol haderech asher holichecha Adonai Elohecha, ze 40 shana bamidbar." This was the journey that the Jewish people took for 40 years in the desert. And now here's the incredibly important part of the sentence. Leman anotecha linasotecha ladat et asher bilvavecha. So that God tested you for 40 years in the desert, gave you hardships to know what's in your heart. God tests. And Ibn Ezra does something beautiful. Ibn Ezra says, let me recall another moment in the Torah where God tested. And he refers us to Genesis 22. Vayhi achar advarim ha'eleh va'Elohim nisa et Avraham. God tested Abraham. God tested Abraham. Not because he didn't know what Abraham was going to do, but so that Abraham would know what he was going to do. Testing is supposed to, in this version, says Ibn Ezra, it's supposed to validate your capacity. It's supposed to say to you, you know it. Own it. It's part of you. You have tremendous capacity, but you don't realize it. According to Ibn Ezra, the Jewish people had to wander for 40 years in the desert so they could learn how competent they were, how capable they were. That when they're going to go into the land of Israel, they're going to have to conquer that land. And the generation before said, there's no way. God said you had to wander for 40 years to learn your ability. Not to gain skills, but to own the skills. There's nothing better than getting a test back with an A on it, which you say, wow, I really knew that stuff. Can't believe it. And we do these things not just in school, but we do them in life. And we say to ourselves time and time again, I can't believe I was able to accomplish that. It was hard, but I was able. And then we use that as a marker for other difficulties and challenges in our lives. We say to ourselves, I was able to do that, so I can overcome this. I beat cancer once, I'll beat it again. And so we learned that. My heart was broken once, but it repaired, and I was able to love again. It was hard, but I'm capable. I'm a child of the Most High. B'nai Elohim kulchem. We're all children of the Most High. We have incredible ability and capacity. And so Ibn Ezra says, you know why we test? We test in order for the student to know how great they are, how capable they are. And that would be enough of a lesson in and of itself for this Shabbat morning. Wouldn't it be great if you could just walk out today with that message? But you know me, I like to throw in the kitchen sink. And so I just want to offer one more possibility. It's a possibility that's offered by the Vilna Gaon in a commentary known as Aderet Eliyahu. The Vilna Gaon in the late 18th century says the following thing. Leman anotcha l'nasotecha ladat et asher b'levavecha. On the verse, God tested us for 40 years in the desert, having us wander around seemingly aimlessly. The definition of wandering Jews trying to find our way. The reason, zeh kineged shlosha kutot. There are three types of people, says the Vilna Gaon. Risha'im, Beinonim, Utzadikim. There are those who are the analytical type of evil, the worst people in the world. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are the most righteous, and then there's the rest of us. the Beinonim, the people in between, somewhere on that continuum from the most righteous to the most evil, falls most of us. He says, V'amar leman anotcha kineged harashaim lehachnia yitzaram. That for the evil, the experience of wandering around the desert was to weed out their evilness, their evil inclination, to uproot that horrible aspect of who they are. L'nasotecha kineged habeinonim. To test those people in the middle. Ladat, so that they can come to understand who they really are. Because they know they're not evil, and they know they're not perfect. So the testing is so they can learn who they are. And then kineged hatzadikim leotzei tovim milvavam. And then the Vilna Gaon says, and for the righteous, it's an opportunity for them to do good. It's an amazing comment that the Vilna Gaon is making. The Vilna Gaon is saying something very simple, and that is, we each can have the same experience, but experience it completely differently. I, as the analytical type of evil, will see one experience and understand it one way. The righteous person will experience it completely differently. And those Beinonim, those regular people like us in the middle, we're going to have to choose which way we're going to see the world. The person is confronted with terrible illness. And one person will say, where is God while I'm suffering? Another person will say, this is God's way of helping me refine who I am. A third person will say, what an opportunity this is for me to see what great things I still have in my life. Says the Vilna Gaon, the experience of the 40 years in the desert was different for every Jew who wandered the desert. And that's true of life. We each can have the same exact experience, but we have a choice to make about how we're going to view it and how we're going to respond. Some people will become hermits and hide away. Some will reach out to others for help, and some will do something in between. How we respond to the events that happen in our lives define who we are. They help us to see how we might progress. We do it with role models. So-and-so had such and such happen. I want to do it like them. That's why we love those stories of people who overcome tremendous difficulty, because we look to them and we say we want to be more like them. We also see people who walk through life as curmudgeons. Everything is bad. Everything is horrible. The sky is falling. And we say, I'm never going to respond like that. This week's Parsha says, the experience of life, if you choose to view them as tests, will make life more difficult. But if you choose to view them as opportunities, life becomes a journey that is exquisite. This week's Parsha offers us the opportunity to say, would I rather be evil or be more righteous? Would I rather be angry or to find the joy? Would I rather hold on to the difficulties or set them free? This week's Parsha says, be who you want to be. Look towards the role models that present for you an opportunity to be more than you ever thought possible, because you have extraordinary capacity. Shabbat Shalom.